Hello everyone, back tuning in to Gazmovids on your August Bank Holiday Monday. So, as always at Gazmovids on the Bank Holiday, we're going to do a historic video for today's video. So we're going to have a rest from the normal video updates that we do on a daily basis. I'm taking the day off, and we always throw the videos open to the historic archive at weathercentral.de, and also information from Trevor Harley's personal weather website. And this Bank Holiday Monday is no exception. So our historic video for this late summer Bank Holiday Monday of 2018 is going to have a look at the summer of 1868, a very long, hot summer in 1868. And also, we're going to look at the winter of 1868, 1869 as well. That was exceptionally mild winter, possibly still the warmest winter ever recorded. So you're going to see some truly awful charts, if you like, cold and snowy weather. But there are a couple of cold months in the mix as well. So going to be something for everyone in this historic video for your late August Bank Holiday Monday. So I'll get on with that for you in a second. Big thank you for tuning in on your Bank Holiday Monday. And just to say that the websites we're using for the historic video are coming from weathercentral.de in terms of the charts, and also the information that you hear. Some of it will come from Trevor Harley's personal weather website. Because we're going so far back into the middle of the 19th century, it's very difficult to get information for this period. So, as well as Trevor Harley's personal weather website, also the information you hear in this video has come from a website called booty.org.uk. And I'll link that as well in the description box at YouTube. So a little bit of additional information just for this one. Usually we only use weathercentral.de and Trevor Harley's personal web website, but this time we had to cast around for a little bit of information elsewhere. I've been able to get some additional information for this period, but it was a very, very long time ago. So a big thank you to those three websites. Big thank you to our good friend Richard Trott as well for pointing me in the direction of booty.org.uk. And again, big thank you to all of you for tuning in to this historic video on your Bank Holiday Monday. And without further ado, I think we better get on with the summer of 1868 first of all. So we're going to begin with May 1868. This is the chart for the 1st of May, actually Friday the 1st of May 1868. Now all I have to go on for this month is that it has a CET of 13.5, so it's a very warm month. But other than that, don't have anything else to go on in terms of additional information. So let's run through the charts and see what happened. We begin here on the 1st of May 1868. We've got low pressure up to our north with high pressure to the south, and we're bringing up this quite warm sort of southwesterly wind. We move through to the 3rd of May, and actually we find low pressure runs across Scotland, and we get this ridge building out to the northwest. So just very briefly, we are putting down some colder air there from the north during the early part of May 1868. That doesn't last all that long. Remember, ridge is back in by the 6th of May, sitting over the top of the country. That's how the 6th of May is looking again. That's how the 8th, I should say, is looking. I should say I'm using the new version of weathercentral.de, and the charts are a little bit different, so I'm having to try and work out what the dates actually are. So this is the 8th of May, 1868. You're going to have to see how we go with this. It's the first time I've ever used the new version of weathercentral for the historic vid, so we'll see how we get on with that one. It's a bit of a walk into the unknown for myself, actually, this video. So, this is the 8th of May, 1868, where we're taking this ridge out to our east. We've got low pressure out to west. We're pulling in these very warm easterly winds. This is going to be a recurring theme as we go through the summer. Now, this is the 14th, where high pressure is increasingly dominant from the south, building up from the south into the UK. The jet stream is the black line here, that's being pushed northwards. So this is turning increasingly warm and dry as we go into the middle of May. Potentially temperatures there are going into the mid to upper 20s Celsius. That's the 18th of May. Again, the high pressure is to the east, the low pressure out to the west, dragging up these warm or very warm southerly or southeasterly winds. Now we get through to the 21st of May, we're finding signs that low pressure is beginning to break this ridge down a little bit, starting to move in from off the Atlantic. The ridge is beginning to recede back in towards northeastern parts of Europe. This low pressure just begins to edge in from off the Atlantic, so it's starting to break down there, turn a little bit cooler, a little bit more unsettled. That's the 25th of May. It does actually look like we've gone into a genuinely unsettled spell of weather here. Low pressures to the west of Scotland, bringing in these west to southwesterly winds. So the ridge has broken, albeit temporarily. The ridge has been pushed into eastern Europe, taking the warmth over to the east side of Europe, and we're in a rather cooler and more unsettled west to southwesterly flow. Go through towards the end of the month, though, and that little unsettled spell doesn't last all that long. This is the 28th of May. We've got high pressure, again, building back into the east of the country with low pressure getting pinged out to the west. That's beginning to bring warmth back up from the south once again. That's the 29th of May with high pressure to the east and low pressure developing close to the west of the country. That looks rather thundery. The air is being pulled up from the south, so you expect some pretty lively weather to be taking place there. We end May 1868 with high pressure in over top of the country, so mainly dry and warm, fine conditions through to the end of the month. So this is the start of meteorological summer. This is a very hot summer, as I say, in 1868. This is the first day of June. June 1868 actually has a central temperature of 15.5. So persistently warm weather by the CET series over the period from May to July. The summer of 1868 was very hot and dry, with some of the highest temperatures ever recorded for the second half of July occurring this year. Of course, we'll go on to that shortly. So there's a remarkable spell of hot days with temperatures over 30 degrees in England during this summer. For the southeast of England specifically, a maximum temperature above 32 degrees was recorded in each and every month from May through to September. So some of those days we were just looking at back in May would have actually achieved temperatures of 32 degrees, 90 Fahrenheit, which is very unusual, of course, for May. Also, in July specifically, the temperature exceeded 32 degrees, 90 Fahrenheit on 9 days. So really very hot July indeed, which we will come on to. The soil was very dry due to lack of precipitation, which would of course mean that solar energy was most effective, and that means effectively you get like an oven effect taking place as the ground dries out and bakes, so the air just becomes hotter and hotter as it rolls over that incredibly dry and baked sort of ground. So this is a really hot summer that we've got going on here. This is the first day of it, the 1st of June 1868, where we have high pressure again just to the east, northeast. Low pressure is out to the southwest. This looks thundery down across the southern part of the country. We're through to the 4th of June, and we find again that we've got this ridge down to our south, building in from the Azores High. Looks like it would have been a little bit changeable for the northern part of the country, a little bit cooler, a little bit more showery there, but again, lots of high pressure going on across particularly the southern part of the UK. That's the 7th of June, with that high pressure, if anything, extending a little bit further. That's the 10th. The high pressure just edges out a little bit to the west of us on the 10th, allows a slightly fresher cooler feed of air from the northwest on the 10th. But by the 14th of June, actually that ridge is building back in again, so hotter conditions, dry conditions are returning to the south. All the time, just that little bit more unsettled, a little bit cooler, a little bit more changeable up to the north and to the west of the country. That's the 17th of June, the Azores high. Again, you see the centre of it is out in the middle of the Atlantic, but it is extending this ridge into the UK and Ireland. So again, that's very warm, dry conditions, barely any rainfall across southern parts of the country throughout this first half of July, and we're even into the second half of July. Now, there hasn't been any sign of rain through this period. Temperatures by this point would be at least into the mid to upper 20s Celsius, if not the low 30s. That high pressure becoming increasingly strong as we go further into the second half of the month. This is the 19th of June, with the high pressure centred almost over the top of the UK, bringing the air up from a southerly to southeasterly direction. So it would obviously be very warm or hot there, with temperatures again into at least the upper 20s, if not the low 30s Celsius. This is the 21st, and low pressure just trying to move in from off the Atlantic as this high pressure goes to Scandinavia, possibly just beginning to start to wobble the atmosphere a little bit. And actually, it does look as though by the time you get through the 24th, we've gone into a slightly flatter westerly flow, maybe just that little bit cooler, and possibly for the north anyway, a little bit more showery. But it certainly doesn't last all that long. As we go to the 27th, we begin to see the high pressure exerting itself even more. So now we've got the high pressure covering all parts of the UK, and this is starting to look a little bit like a heat wave is beginning to get going right at the end. Right at the end of June. That high pressure is in for the 28th of June as well. Very dry, sunny, hot conditions. This is the 29th. Again, real heat wave conditions with this. Temperatures are going to be into the low 30s Celsius at least, I would have thought. 31, 32, 33 is definitely possible at the end of June with that sort of synoptic pressure pattern. And that's taking temperatures into the 90s Fahrenheit. So up to the final day of June 1868, we've got this high pressure in situ over top of the country, dry, hot conditions across all parts of the country with this area of high pressure. These are upper air temperatures. You see the 10 Celsius isotherm is right the way through the country. So this is easily taking temperatures up to the mid to upper 20 Celsius widely across the country. I think some places would have been into the low 30 Celsius there at the end of June. So we'll go through to July then. Of course, this July is very hot month indeed. It has a central England temperature of 18. It has a central England temperature of 18.3 degrees. I do have a little bit of information from Trevor Harvey for this month, and that particularly relates to what happens on the 22nd of July 1868. So we'll get to that very shortly. But as I say, it's a very hot month. It has that CET of 18.3, and also remarkably dry as well. So actually, up to 1976, it turns out that the summer of 1868 probably has the longest period of dry weather up to the summer of 1976. It was regarded by many until 1976 at least as the longest due to lack of rainfall and hottest in the instrumental record for England, hottest and driest summer in the instrumental record up to 1976. Now, there will be some challengers to that, of course. We've got 1893 occurring nearly 30 years later on, and also got the summer of 1911 as well. So there were very hot summers between this one and 1976, but this is right up there. The summer of 1868, particularly July 1868, is right up there with the very hottest summers on record. So this is how we start this historic July, with high pressure centred over the top of the country. It looks as though it will be very dry, sunny, and hot through this month. We're up to the 3rd of July, and again that high pressure is maintained. Just some slightly cooler, fresher air rolling around the top of the high pressure, around the side of it, possibly bringing something a little bit cooler and fresher into the southeast, but essentially the high pressure keeps the dry and hot conditions going, and that's the 5th of July with no change. Dry and hot weather is maintained. That's the 6th of July, so the prolonged hot spell continues through this first week of the month. This is the 8th of July. Again, you see how the ridge is extending in from the Azores High, covering all parts of the country. So it's not particularly intensely high pressure, which is something you often don't see in the summer. But the point is the sheer persistence of this area of high pressure, bringing all of this dry, sunny and hot weather. And then go through to the 10th, and actually the high pressure is strengthened, if anything. It's becoming even stronger. It's up to 1,030 millibars then across Scotland. And it's just going nowhere fast. It's just sitting in situ over the top of the country, bringing dry, sunny and hot conditions as well. That's the 12th. The heat wave goes on. High pressure is dominating the weather over top of the country. The wind is in from the east. Easterly winds in the middle of summer are hot, as we know from the summer that we just experienced in 2018. So again, it does look as though we are bringing in hot air from the east. We have got low pressure to our south. That's trying to bring something thundery out of Biscay and out of France too. There's the upper air temperatures. You see the 10 Celsius isotherm is way to our north, very unusual, with the 15 Celsius isotherm across northern parts of France and into southern England. I reckon that's lifting temperatures at least to below, if not the mid 30s Celsius there on the 12th of July. You're going to get temperatures with that sort of upper air temperature profile out such a prolonged dry and hot period anyway, into at the very least sort of low 30s, 19 Fahrenheit type mark. So again, that's the 12th. The high pressure is going nowhere fast. It's over the top of the country, and we keep this ridge going right way up to the middle of the month. This is the 14th of July. Again, the main Azores High is out there in the Atlantic, but look how it's throwing its ridge through the UK and taking it up to Scandinavia. This is something that we saw through the long hot summer of 2018. All of the hottest summers have this sort of profile of the Azores High ridging up to the Scandinavian high and just getting thousands and thousands of miles worth of intense high pressure ridging through the north and the west of Europe. The jet stream, of course, is up here. It's around Greenland and Iceland, way to our north. So just as in 2018, they're probably having quite a cool, they probably had quite a cool and unsettled summer in 1868. Bring to the second half of this very hot July. 16th of July looks like that. Bit of a thundery low just to our southeast. That might have been threatening some thunderstorms to the southeastern part of the country. But again, the main issue is that we've got this high pressure through the country, bringing lots of very dry and warm conditions too. We're up to the 18th, and if anything, the weather is getting even hotter. Even hotter air is starting to push up out of France and head towards us, as again, we have high pressure dominating both to our north and northeast, and also to our west and southwest as well. That takes us to the 19th, no real change, and then we're on to the 20th, and we're nearing quite an important point in this summer. There's the upper air temperatures for the 20th of July. Look how very hot it is across France. You've got the 15 Celsius isotherm there across northern France, the 20 Celsius isotherm, which takes temperatures in the UK to 100 Fahrenheit. That is across central parts of France. So that's the 21st of July, 1868. And again, we've got this ridge through the country. Very hot air is sitting just to our south, and we are nearing the hottest point of this summer now. So this is the 22nd of July, 1868, and we've got low pressure trying to bring that very intense heat northwards out of France. This is a heat low. Not sure if it would have been generating much way of thunder. It just depends how much moisture it picks up from Biscay. The heat low is being generated just by those extremely hot temperatures that we have across France. So this heat low is trying to bring that extreme heat out of France. So this day, Trevor Harley writes, was reported as having a record at Tunbridge on the 22nd of July 1868. Although the screening was non-standard, and this temperature that was recorded, which was, by the way, 38.1, which is 100.5 Fahrenheit, although it was a non-standard recording, and this temperature is now regarded as being far too high. So actually 100 Fahrenheit was recorded on this day in 1868, 22nd of July, but it's disregarded now. It seems like the recording was a false recording due to non-standard instrumentation. The temperature was more likely to actually be around 36.5, which is kind of like 97 to 98 Fahrenheit. Trevor Harley also writes it was a very dry month in July 1868 with no rain at all recorded in parts of the Midlands. So, I mean, we're talking about an exceptionally hot day with temperatures up to 36, borderlining 37 degrees if you was to round it up. So we're getting perilously close to 100 Fahrenheit, but that temperature of 38.1, 100.5 Fahrenheit was or has been disregarded as being too high. Nevertheless, this is the peak of the summer of 1868. It's an exceptionally hot day. We've got the 15 Celsius isotherm there through southern parts of the UK. 20 Celsius isotherm is into northern parts of France. It looks as though it's just exceptionally hot and dry for this day. Then we go through to the 23rd, and the high pressure just pulls a little bit to the northwest, which possibly allows a slightly cooler, fresher air to come in across England and Wales anyway, from the North Sea. Upper air temperatures just edge back that little bit, so that 15 Celsius isotherm begins to be pushed back into northern parts of France. So I don't think any thunder ever really gets to us. As I say, no measurable rain is recorded all month in July 1868 in the Midlands. So I don't think we have much of a thundery end to that exceptional heat there on the 22nd. It just cools down ever so slightly, turns a little bit fresher. Temperatures probably drop from like the mid 30 Celsius down to the low 30 Celsius as we start to pull in that slightly cooler air from off the North Sea. But the heat wave goes on, really. Look at this. This was 24th of July with that high pressure still centering itself over the top of the UK. Its core is out in the Atlantic with the Azores, but it's a huge ridge that covers the Atlantic into the UK. So the dry, hot weather is maintained. That's the 26th again, looking very dry and hot. The wind is in from the east or the southeast. So once again, you would expect a lot of really hot weather with that. We're going towards the end of July now. This very hot month continues to look exceptionally hot. Now, I'm not sure what the temperature was here, but it does actually look as though it should be a little bit higher than it was on the 22nd. So if anybody knows what the temperature was that was recorded on the 27th of July 1868, I'd love to know. But again, look at this. We've got the 20 Celsius isotherm covering just about all of France. So temperatures obviously there are going to be over 100 Fahrenheit. Probably some areas going up above 40 degrees Celsius across much of France. Got the 15 Celsius isotherm covering much of England and Wales too. The only thing I'm wondering whether there was a little bit more cloud, the humidity was perhaps a bit higher, and maybe there was some thunderstorms which kind of stopped temperatures getting as hot, because as we get through to 28th, actually we're finding a low pressure just developing in situ, triggered by those exceptionally high hot upper air temperatures. So this does look increasingly thundery as we're heading towards the closing days of this really hot July. It does look as though it's becoming increasingly thundery close to the UK with that area of low pressure. Although we know from Trevor Hartley that some parts of the Midlands did not record any measurable rain at all from beginning to end in this July. So any storms that did develop must have been very hit and miss, to say the least. That's how we end July 1868. So this really hot month finishes with high pressure still there, still holding on across most parts of the UK. The long hot summer goes on. So we get to August, and still that high pressure is centering itself over the top of the country, but its days are starting to draw to a close. So August centering temperature comes out at 16.8. So after the hot July of 18.3, we're still warm, still very warm actually, for the August Central England temperature at 16.8, but it is lower. It has cooled off compared to what it is in July. However, we begin still very hot with this area of high pressure centering itself over top of the country. The long hot summer goes on. That is the 2nd of July when we begin to take that high pressure out to the east of us and pull up these hot southerly winds, probably increasingly unstable with those southerly winds as well. There's the upper air temperatures. Yes, it still looks really hot. Temperatures are going to be going into, at the very least, below 30 Celsius, if not the mid 30 Celsius once again. Let me reiterate that during July 1868, we get that incredible run of days where temperatures go to 32 degrees or more. The temperature exceeded 32 degrees 90 Fahrenheit on 9 days during July 1868. And this is continuing into August. I reckon this will at the very least be again lifting those temperatures up to 32, probably even more than 32 degrees Celsius. But very gradually, this high pressure is beginning to get eroded. So more energy is starting to develop in the Atlantic here on the 3rd of August, and also to our south as well. We're just starting to erode this area of high pressure ever so slightly. So by the time you get through to the 4th, looks like a breakdown is beginning to take place. But high pressure is starting to slip up to Scandinavia. It's beginning to turn more unstable both to the west and to the south of the UK. I think this will be breaking out widespread thunderstorms, although there's no real information about this either at Booty or at Trevor Harley's weather website, but that looks to me as though increasingly widespread thunderstorms will be breaking out, bringing an end to that exceptional dry spell and hot spell that started in May and went right the way through to July. There's the upper air temperatures. They're still very warm, but the core of the heat is now beginning to get pushed down into eastern parts of France. And so as we carry on further into this first week of July 1868, it looks like we turn increasingly unsettled. Here we are with an actual area of low pressure to the north of Scotland, and we're bringing in a much cooler and fresher westerly wind there from off the Atlantic. The Atlantic air conditioner is finally turned on as we get through to the end of the first week of August 1868. I'm sure it must have been a very, very welcome relief by this point. It's been so intensely hot and dry up to this point. I doubt there would be very many people that would have been disappointed to see the weather beginning to cool down. Very similar this summer to the summer that we've just had, have to say, the way the heat built through May, June, and particularly July, reaching its peak with a very hot month in July, and then after a hot opening to August, beginning to cool down and just turn that little bit more showery and unsettled too. This is the 10th of August, and again it looks like we're trying to build this high pressure to the east. We're trying to drag up these hotter southerly winds, but essentially it's still the case that low pressure is close to us. That's the 14th, and again it looks quite unsettled, that with low pressure centred across Ireland this time, so that's bringing wet weather probably primarily to England and Wales, and again the areas off the Atlantic, so it would be relatively cool, relatively comfortable. And these more unsettled and changeable conditions take us into the rest of August 1868 as well, compared to what we had through the earlier and part of summer, and particularly in July. These are much more unsettled, much more changeable charts. So up to the 25th of August 1868, the wind is in from the northwest. We've got low pressure over Scandinavia, so that does look showery, and it also looks relatively cool as well. The closing days of August 1868 actually see the high pressure trying to re-establish itself with nowhere near the same conviction that it did, or it was, through the earlier part of the summer. But nevertheless, the ridge is trying to build up from the Azores again. So we end this very hot summer, albeit with a cooler, more unsettled August. We end it on a rather settled note, quite a warmish note, but nowhere near as hot as through the earlier part of the summer. Then we'll take you into September. So this is how the first day of September looks in 1868. And again, we have this high pressure out to the west-southwest this time, with again cooler, fresher air rolling in around the top. Now again, for September 1868, I had very little go on. All that I can tell you is that it was a relatively warm month with a central temperature of 14.3, so a little bit warmer than average, but nowhere near as hot as through the earlier part of the summer months. That's the 5th of September. High pressure is sitting over top of the country, so classic old wives summer opening to September 1868 with lots of high pressure bringing dry, warm, possibly very warm conditions. I could easily imagine temperatures into below to mid, possibly even upper 20 Celsius there on the 5th of September. Upper air temperatures look warm, not as hot as through the peak of the summer, but even so, the 10 Celsius ice firm is close to the country, which is going to lift temperatures, probably if there's sunshine anyway, in early September to the mid-20s Celsius. That's quite an interesting chart on the 7th. High pressure still maintained over the UK, but look at this deep area of low pressure in the central Atlantic. That must have been some sort of hurricane that come up out of the tropical Atlantic and moved into the northern part of the Atlantic. That's going to have a go at breaking this area of high pressure. Will it succeed? Well, no. Actually, what happens is that this low containing these tropical remains stalls to the south of Greenland on the 8th of September, and so that just allows this high pressure over UK to inflate and intensify again. So a lot of very, very dry weather through this early part of September 1868. That's the 9th. Again, the high pressure is over the top of the country, so dry, fine, warm, potentially very warm conditions going on there. Now, as we get through to the 12th, we begin to start to inch out high pressure just a little bit further northwards, and underneath it, we're starting to get low pressure beginning to develop around France and the Bay of Biscay. So actually, we start to pull in some cooler air from an east or northeasterly direction here as we go into the 15th of September. We start to inch that high pressure further north up towards Iceland. This is not only turning a lot cooler, it's also turning much more unsettled as well. So we get through to the 18th. This will be bringing possibly very wet conditions across England and Wales, with the high pressure up towards Greenland and Iceland. The wind is from an east or northeasterly direction, and this is quite typical actually of what we have through this autumn, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. But yeah, this looks like we go into a much cooler and a much wetter phase of weather as we get through into the second half of September. So after the dry, really warm start, hot start potentially, we're into a far more cooler and more unsettled second half. This is proper autumnal weather that's suddenly set up as the high pressure has gone further and further north. This is the same high pressure really that gave us the hot summer and the very warm start to September. All that's happened is that it's gone further and further north with time, and so now by the 21st of September the high pressure is actually centering over Greenland and Iceland. It's northern blocking, and that's allowing low pressure to develop underneath it. So we've got cool or even very cool easterly winds, and we've also got these areas of low pressure generating heavy rain, and that heavy rain is particularly focused across England and across Wales. Now that's the 24th, and actually we start to pull down some Arctic air then, would you believe? So after such a hot summer, all of a sudden we have gone into a very, very cool and unsettled scenario here at the end of September. We've got northern blocking around Greenland, we've got low pressure off the coast of Portugal, and also to the east of the UK, and if you follow the isobars back, you can see the air is originating from a very long way north. Let's highlight it. The air is originating from up there and is pushing down into the UK. in that sort of direction. So we carry on further into the end of September, and it looks really unsettled with low pressure again centred over top of the country. This is a really unsettled end to September. It's cool as well. There'll be heavy rain and also very depressed temperatures. We really are talking about proper autumnal conditions that we have taking place here as we get through to the end of September. Given how cool and wet it looks like the second half of September was, it is surprising that the CET holds up at 14.3, and it must just show that the first half of the month, or the first sort of 10 days anyway of the month, must have been very, very warm to be able to keep the central temperature at 14.3 for the month as a whole, with such a very wet and cool looking signal for the first half of for the second half of the month. So we've got to September. We've gone from May through to September. I think at that point, we talked for 35 minutes. I think at that point we will pause the video, and when I come back we're going to go through the rest of the autumn of 1868 and the winter of 1868-1869. Now, although it has turned a lot cooler at the end of September, we haven't had yet any particularly cold months, but that's going to change in a minute. So we are going to see some colder months before we get to that very, very warm winter of 1868-1869. But I'm going to pause the video there, going to get a drink of water. Why don't you go and get yourself a cup of tea and some biscuits, and we'll meet back in around 2 seconds time. So see you very, very shortly. Okay, and we're back and we're ready to continue looking at 1868. I just checked to make sure we're recording. Yes, we are. So we've looked at the very hot summer of 1868 from May to September. We got to September. We had a very hot and dry first half to September, a very warm and dry first half of September, but then the heavens broke, and the second half of September, there's not much detail about it, looks as though it turned much wetter and also much cooler, with the high pressure that actually gave us such a hot summer going further north to Greenland, becoming a northern blocking type feature and setting up a really cool and unsettled pattern. And this is going to continue through the remainder of the autumn, I can tell you that. So we have got to the start of October now. This is the first day of October 1868, and we'll carry on with the story of 1868 and also 1869 too. So we begin on the first day of October 1868 with high pressure out to the west of the UK, low pressure continues to be to the south and the east as it was through much of the first half of September, and we continue to pull down these cool or even very cool north or northeasterly winds. Now we get to the 3rd of October, high pressure over Scandinavia, and the wind has turned into the east. Unlike in July, when easterly winds are going to be hot, in October they can potentially be quite chilly, especially if they're coming from sort of north of the east, as these isobars are showing this easterly wind is. The air is originating actually from like Svalbard, coming around this high pressure. It's going to be pretty chilly. The CET for October 1868, all I've got again in terms of information for this month is the CET. That comes out at a cold 8.4. In modern standards in 2018, been a long, long time since we had an October central temperature that was as cold as that, underneath 9 degrees Celsius. So we carry on through this month, and we find that an Atlantic flow is trying to re-establish itself as we get through to the 7th. Again, there's some sort of hurricane that's heading in towards Newfoundland there on the left-hand side of the map as you're looking at it. For us, well, we've got this ridge down to our south, and we're bringing in this west or northwest westerly flow. We are trying to get a little bit of warmth into the southeast, but I don't think that's going to come to much really. This is the 10th. We've got high pressure reaching through the country on the 10th of October in 1868. Probably bring quite a lot of dry and quite cold weather, I would have thought. Frost and fog probably taking place there. Up to the middle part of October 1868, we find that the weather turns increasingly unsettled. This is the 15th, with low pressure to the north. We're bringing down what looks like quite a cold northwesterly wind out of Greenland. That takes us to the 18th, with the low pressure sliding to the east of the UK. So again, quite cold, quite unsettled conditions. We're on the cold side of the jet stream there, indicated by the black line. So with turning winds into the north, that's undoubtedly bringing night frost and probably cold daytime temperatures as well. Moving into the final phase of the month, increasingly unsettled, maybe you'd say even a little bit stormy here, going through the last week of October. That's the 27th, with a deep area of low pressure across Scandinavia. High pressures out to the southwest, and again we're lining the jet stream up northwest to southeast, so quite a cold northwesterly wind feeding through across the country on the 27th. That's the final day, Halloween, in October 1868. Looks like that, with high pressure to the south of the UK, low pressure to the north, actually probably ending October 1868 on a relatively mild note. And that's how we go into November 1868 as well, looking relatively mild with those southwesterly winds. For November 1868, we come out with a central temperature of 4.9, so it is a cold month. November 1868 was a cold month with a CET anomaly of minus 1.1 degrees below average. However, it turns out to be a false start to the winter season. So you're going to see some cold charts, but make the most of them, because you won't be seeing many of them when we get through to the winter. This is the 4th of November 1868, with deep area of low pressure crashing into Norway, and that's turning the wind into the north, a proper Arctic northerly there, coming down through the country. That's bonfire night, 5th of November. Remember the 5th of November on 1868. And the wind is into the north. An Arctic northerly is blasting down across the country. That long hot summer, a dim and distant memory, I'm quite sure. There's the upper air temperatures. And we've got the -5 isotherm right way through the country, actually, on the 5th of November, which is quite unusual. That's unusually cold weather for early November. That will be bringing snow showers to northern parts of the country, and wintry showers would be even pushing down in towards the south, I would have thought, with that. That's the 6th of November, actually a direct hit from the Arctic there. Have got a little bit of a ridge out to west of Ireland, but with low pressure to the east, the wind is forced down from the north. So that's a proper Arctic northerly that we've got hitting the country there through the 6th of November. There's the upper air temperatures. They do look cold, certainly cold enough for snow in the north and the west, possibly even cold enough for wintry weather even down into the southeastern part of the country. After that heat of the summer, things really do look a lot colder during this autumn. We're up to the 8th of November, and we've got the ridge up to the north and also to the southwest as well. We're on the cold side of the jet, so probably the risk of wintry showers, snow showers easing off there, but that looks really frosty, and I think daytime temperatures would be struggling to get much above freezing across some parts of the country. And then we start to generate high pressure to the north of the country, the wind going into the east, so we start to drag in these bitterly cold easterly winds as we get through to the 10th of November. This is really, really unusual stuff. Look how far east the easterly wind is originating from. It's originating from sort of Russia, and it's bringing that easterly right way across Europe into the UK. That is a classic easterly, if ever there was one. There's the upper air temperatures, bitterly cold. So we're talking about hard night frost. Daytime temperatures, because it's November, probably not sub-zero, unless it's cloudy or it's snowing, but even so, daytime temperatures would be really suppressed. We are actually bringing the 10 Celsius isotherm towards the east coast of Scotland, which on the 10th of November is very unusual indeed. The Scandinavian high continues to the 11th. Again, bitterly cold easterly winds continuing then. To the 13th, we start to collapse the ridge down across the UK. Now, bear in mind, this is back in the 1800s. So what we're going to be generating here is fog and smog. Dirty air will be generating not only hard night frost, severe night frost under this ridge, but you're also likely to be generating a lot of fog, likely to be fogging up, maybe even smogging up, you could say. That's the 16th. High pressure just edges out to the west of us, but it's still cold. We're still bringing the air in from a northerly type direction then. High pressure continues to sit over country, so lots of dry, quiet, frosty, cold weather as we're going through this second half of November, with lots of snow risk from those earlier northerly and easterly winds, but nevertheless it's still cold underneath that area of high pressure. Now, we're up to the 20th of November, and we're beginning to inch out high pressure into Central Europe. The Atlantic is just starting to put it under a little bit of pressure. And by the time we get through the 21st, actually we begin to break the Atlantic through. So this is the reason, up to now, I'm sure we have a very cold overall CET temperature at this point in November 1868. Perhaps even into sort of record-breaking cold territory, but now we're beginning to establish a much milder southwesterly flow. So after all that cold weather, it is slowly starting to turn milder and turn less cold. And that's how we go up towards the end of November. We tried to re-establish a high pressure over Scandinavia. It's having another go at coming back. It is getting the wind into the east here on the 27th, but with far less conviction. The high pressure over Scandinavia looks rather flimsy. It doesn't look like it's going to stand up to the Atlantic. That's the final day of November 1868, and again still hints of high pressure over Scandinavia, still hints of high pressure being to the north of the UK, but with this area of low pressure down to the southwest trying to bring bands of rain and much milder southerly or southwesterly winds into the UK. It does look as though the high pressure's days are numbered. That's the first day of December, the first day of this incredibly exceptionally mild winter of 1868-1869 looks like that, with low pressure out to the west of the country. I'll carry on reading from what we got from Booty then. So we've already established that November 1868 was a cold month, has that anomaly, CT anomaly, of 1.1 degree below average. However, this turned out to be a false start to the winter, as the subsequent standard winter, December, January, February, became, until the 21st century, the warmest winter by CT in the series, which began in 1659. Now, this is suggesting that this winter has been beaten. I'm not sure whether that's right, whether we have beaten winter of 1868, 1869 in the modern winters that we've had over the past few years. I know 2015, 2016 got very, very close to it after an extraordinarily warm December, but I thought the final sort of week to 5 days of February 2016 put the kibosh on that. We didn't quite do it. We didn't quite beat 1868, 1869. So I thought for the CT, anyway, probably not for the UK-wide temperature, but I thought for the CT, actually that winter of 1869, 1868, 1869, that winter, warm winter record was still standing. So if anybody knows whether that's the case or not, please do let me know via the comments. I thought this was still the warmest winter on record in 1868, 1869, but Booty is suggesting that we have actually beaten it. Anyway, I'll carry on. So the overall value, December, January, February, was equal to 6.77, representing an anomaly for the winter overall of 3.2 degrees on the all-series mean. December December had a value of 7.2, but CET for this December comes out at a very warm 7.2. January is going to come out at 5.6. That's the coldest, if you can call it that, the coldest month of this winter. And then February comes out at an amazing 7.5, an anomaly of 3.7 degrees above average. December was in the top 10 of warm such named months, while February 1869 was the second warmest February of the entire CET series. It also has very high overall rainfall being recorded in both England and Wales series, and from stations in Ireland too. It suggests a highly zonal westerly pattern held sway from the end of November 1868 until at least late February 1869. Several storms with high tides were noted in Connaught in the first couple of months, January and February of 1869. So let's run you through these charts then very quickly. We're up to the 3rd of December and low pressure is breaking through. And look at this, by the 6th we have gone into the pattern that's going to dominate this exceptionally mild winter. Low pressure is out of the Atlantic. We're bringing up this long fetched southwesterly wind. The air is out of the Azores. It looks wet, it looks windy, and it looks exceptionally mild too. Now we do try and generate a little bit of a ridge and try to push it northwards on the 9th, but it's not going to come to anything. By the time you get through to the 13th, that ridge has been swept into the east of Europe by these strong westerly winds, these areas of low pressure bringing bouts of rain and also very mild southerly or southeasterly winds. That's the 17th of December. Exceptionally mild air, again, being pumped out of the Azores and up to the UK. Also very wet with copious amounts of rain too. These charts are reminiscent of what we saw in that exceptionally warm December of 2015. That's the 21st of December 1868. Looks stormy. Gale force winds would be sweeping the country, but again it's exceptionally mild with the wind from the southwest. We're having a go at generating a bit of high pressure over Scandinavia and western Russia, but its days are numbered. This low pressure is going to be the driver of the weather, there's no doubt about that. Running up to Christmas, that's how we look. Christmas 1868 was unsettled with low pressure centred over the top of the country. That is Christmas Day 1868. Low pressure is over top of the UK, so you've got showers along the spells of rain. Probably not exceptionally mild, but it certainly won't be particularly cold, so a green Christmas there in 1868. There's our upper air temperatures in 1868, and they do look generally mild across most of the country. Wouldn't necessarily say very mild really, but certainly a mild day. Temperatures probably up to 10 degrees with showers or longer spells of rain on Christmas Day 1868. That's Boxing Day, and the mild, wet, unsettled weather continues. 27th of December turns increasingly stormy as these areas of low pressure move in from off the Atlantic, and then as we head up towards New Year, you've guessed it, we're going to keep it unsettled, although a slight break in the west or southwesterly flow does allow some slightly cooler air to begin to move southwards, so it does turn a bit colder for New Year's Eve. Maybe some wintry showers across northern parts of Scotland, but essentially it has been a complete and total write-off this month for cold weather. And any suggestion of a slightly cooler interlude for New Year's Eve or a slightly colder interlude for New Year's Eve is swept away again on New Year's Day 1869 as this deep area of low pressure develops in the Atlantic and sweeps more wet and windy weather in from off the Atlantic. And so here we go again. We've gone to the 5th of January and unleashing these exceptionally mild west-southwesterly winds once again. So more really wet and windy weather then. Now, the 8th of January gives us a taste of spring by the look of it, because we start to shift the jet stream up to the north, and that begins to pull up these exceptionally mild, I'd actually say warm, southerly to southwesterly winds. The air is coming from the south of the Azores here, probably from North Africa and the Canary Islands, pumping up this exceptionally warm southerly airflow. There's the upper air temperatures. Look how warm they are across the UK with these upper air temperatures on the 10th of January. I reckon that could be lifting temperatures to 14, 15, possibly 16 degrees Celsius. There's no definitive answer about how warm it gets on this day, but to me that looks like it could get temperatures to the mid-teens Celsius. Exceptionally mild, especially kind of like Moray Firth, that sort of area. With a bit of phone effect, if there's sunshine, I think mid, maybe even upper teens Celsius. You wouldn't be totally ruling that out. Conversely, look down into the southeast of Europe, and it is very, very cold down there, freezing cold and snowy through the Balkans and heading down towards Greece. And this is 1869, so a lot of people think that this kind of pattern, when it sets up in the modern era, is sort of unique to the modern era, but it just goes to show, even back in 1869, we was getting these sort of weather patterns at times where the northwest of Europe is exceptionally warm, and the south and southeast of Europe is exceptionally cold and also very snowy too. Despite this very warm weather, remember this is actually our coolest month of the winter, this January, with a CET of 5.6 against December, which came out at 7.2, and February, which will come out at 7.5 degrees. That's how we look on the 12th. Again, we've got the high pressure to our east, low pressure to west, bringing up these very mild southerly winds. The only difference is that with slightly more of a continental feed, maybe those winds are beginning to turn ever so slightly cooler. Then the Atlantic starts to try and break back briefly, and then we head up into the second half of the month. This is the 19th, again with high pressure sitting just to our east. Looks really cold across the southeast of Europe, by the way, with those east-northeast winds feeding very cold air out of Russia into the southeast and the southern part of Europe. For us, I suspect it's a little bit cooler now compared to what we had about 10 days earlier. The reason is that with the high pressure centred over Central Europe, the wind, instead of being southerly, is kind of southeasterly, and that would bring in colder continental type air. So at the very least, we may be generating frost at this point, and daytime temperatures probably returning closer to average. So I suppose that explains why this comes out as the coolest, if you can call it that, the coolest month of the winter. That's the 21st, having a go at generating the Scandinavian high and getting the wind into the east definitively, but it's not really going to come to much. It is a bit colder though here by the 24th, just a little bit. Could well be seeing some quite frosty nights, I would have thought, by this point. But already we're starting to re-establish that west-southwesterly flow for Scotland and the Northern Ireland. And so as we break through to the end of January, you've guessed it, here comes the low pressures again. We're back where we started, into very wet and windy, but also exceptionally mild weather, with these long fetched southwesterlies pumping up the air out of the tropical Atlantic, dumping copious amounts of rain. Severe gale force winds here on the last day of January. That looks like a real storm that's going on there, giving us a proper old battering. But again, very mild, very wet and very windy. And then we go into February and we just keep it going. Again, here's more long fetched southwesterly winds on the 3rd of February. Pumping up this exceptional warmth once again out of the Azores and the tropical Atlantic. Look at that on the 6th of February. Shades of February 1998 perhaps there. That could be lifting temperatures again into the mid to possibly upper teens Celsius, particularly across southern parts of the country, as the air is wafting up out of North Africa, covering most parts of Europe. Very wet for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but for England and Wales, the main thing is that exceptionally warm temperature that's going on. There's the upper air temperatures. Again, we've got the 10 Celsius ice firm. Can you believe that? 10 Celsius ice firm is into the southeastern part of the country. That is very, 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 very unusual for early February to see the 10 Celsius ice firm pulled up out of North Africa. Remember, this month has a central temperature of 7.5, and you can see why it was just so exceptionally mild. Back to more wet westerly winds, southwesterly winds as we go into the 10th, and then up to Valentine's Day 1869, we remain very mild, very warm indeed. Once again, we've got those long fetched southwesterlies across England and Wales, trying to turn a little bit colder for Scotland. That's the 17th, wet and windy, not quite as warm as it was a few days earlier, but nevertheless it's still generally mild. The wind is pumping in from off the Atlantic. A little bit of a change by the time we get through to the 21st. We begin to get this ridge from the Azores heading up towards the north of Scotland, trying to get wind into the east. In fact, we have got a little bit of an easterly wind there across England and Wales. I don't think it would have been particularly cold, but it would certainly been a little bit cooler compared to the very warm temperatures that we have through the earlier part of the month. Any suggestion of something cooler is quickly swept away. By the end of the month, we're just back where we've been throughout most of the winter, which is wet and windy, low pressure in control. This is the last day of February, the last day of this exceptionally mild winter. Sees high pressure just beginning to nose in to Scandinavia. This low pressure just starting to slip away a little bit to our south. And so the upper air temperatures are just turning a bit colder across Scotland. Maybe the final day of winter produces something a little bit wintry across Scotland, but through most parts of the country still looking generally quite mild. However, there is one more real twist to this tale, because we go through to March 1869. And can you believe it? We get a central temperature for March 1869 of just 3.8 degrees. It's colder, significantly, substantially colder in March than it is through any of the winter months, and even including that cold November as well. So once again, the weather gods decided to do something surprising and unexpected. And the reason is, as you'll see in a moment, that we start to push the jet stream southeastward. So this is the 8th of March 1869, and the jet stream is beginning to slip to the south of the UK. High pressure is beginning to set up through the middle of the Atlantic. That starts to turn the wind into a cooler or a colder northwesterly wind. And then actually we go into quite a wintry spell. So this is the 10th of March 1869. With high pressure out to the west and the northwest of the country, and we're actually bringing in what it looks like really quite a cold east or northeasterly wind. With low pressure to our south, that could be generating snow across southern and eastern parts of the country. That's the 12th of March. It looks cold with low pressure through Central Europe. The wind is in from the east or northeast. It's a cold source east or northeasterly as well. Of course, by this point, the daffodils are going to be widely out across the country because it's such a exceptionally mild winter. Probably even fruit blossom. I suspect a little bit of fruit blossom would have been out by this point, getting a real shock here on the 14th of March as the wind is in from the east. It's actually originating, the air here is originating from Russia. So after all of those incredibly warm, long fetch southwesterly winds from the tropical Atlantic, total switch around, and now we've got winds coming in from Russia with those easterly winds undoubtedly bringing in snow. There's the upper air temperatures. They're not exceptionally cold, but they're certainly cold enough to be bringing snow into eastern parts of the country in the form of heavy snow showers. That's the 15th. Again, we've got the high pressure centred to the north and northeast of us. The long fetch easterly rather than long fetch southwesterly. Look where the air is originating from. It's back here in central Russia, pushing right away across the continent and into Europe as well. And then we go to the upper air temperatures, and they're still looking very cold there for the middle of March. 16th maintains cold weather. tried to bring low pressure in from the Atlantic. There's a battle taking place there, probably producing heavy rain and heavy snow. You see how the fronts are being held up by this cold easterly airstream. So there's a weather front that's strung out in that sort of position. That could be bringing heavy and persistent outbreaks of snow to southern and western parts of the country in what is a very wintry March indeed. Now, by the 18th, those westerly winds finally start to break through, begins to turn a bit milder very briefly, but doesn't actually get sustained. And by the 21st, we're back to the high pressure over Scandinavia, and we're back to those easterly winds once again. Not as cold as they were earlier in the month, but nevertheless still cold enough to be producing frost, probably still cold enough to be producing wintry showers. Up to the end of March in 1869, essentially we're maintaining cold weather. We have high pressure out to our west and also across Scandinavia, with the low pressure slipping down from the north and into central parts of Europe. And I think at that point, because we've gone on for over an hour, that is where we're going to wind things up. So I can actually tell you that April had another twist in the tail and went over 10 degrees in terms of the central temperature. So after a really cold and wintry March, from that exceptionally warm winter, which followed quite a cold autumn, which came after a really hot summer, after all of those twists and turns, we get to April, and after the very cold March, we actually have a really warm April with a central temperature of over 10 degrees. So what a wild ride we had in 1868 and 1869. It just goes to show you that you never know with the UK what's around the corner. I bet back then they couldn't believe they had such a hot summer, followed by a cold, wintry, particularly November, but a fairly chilly autumn really after the first half of September anyway. And then such an exceptionally warm winter to be followed by a really wintry March. Who could have understood what was going on back in 1868, 1869? It just goes to show you never ever know what the weather has in store. It always finds a way to surprise us and catch us out. It's been doing it since the dawn of time, and it will continue to do so in the future. I've no doubt of that. Right, so at 1 hour 5 minutes, it's time to wrap things up. Hope you found this look at 1868 and 1869 interesting. Some very unusual weather taking place through that period. Thanks so much for tuning in on your bank holiday. I always say this with the historic videos, but I want to just emphasize the point. Thank you so much for giving up an hour of your time on your bank holiday Monday. Whatever you've got ahead for you for the rest of today, I hope you enjoy it. This video will be placed within the Historic Archive at Gav's Weather Vids later today. It'll have its own page. It'll be placed within the Historic Archive, so you can come back and watch the video whenever you want. Normal service will be resumed tomorrow when you will be back with your regular weather videos. But at 1 hour 6 minutes, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.